Hola, so welcome back to the Talk Past podcast. Today we're going to go ahead and continue that string of festival stories, which we've been discussing with the cast and crew of the channel and their festival and medieval production experience. So today I have a good friend, Melissa. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi. Wait, thank you for inviting me.
Indeed, anytime in the future, on so on. But let's get to I had some ham on my plate. Sorry there. Get to the meat of the matter. Speaking of, of course, we both do a medieval festival and a few other things, and on occasion stuff here for the channel that we've done in the past. How did you get into doing the festival that we do?
Um, Actually, I think it was through Jeremy. I know we apparently know some of the same people. It was just one of our friends. She said, "Hey, I'm auditioning for the fair. If anyone wants to do it, go ahead." And that's how I got in. And she didn't stay, but I did. So I mean, it's been pretty good.
Oh, cool. What year did you start? Because you didn't start the same year I did.
No, I started in 2009.
What was
So
that?
it's
Was that Hastings?
yes, Battle of Hastings.
How was that for you? Did you do did you do like fighting on the board, or are you just general?
No, I was actually general.
Ooh,
I find that if I've never done fair before, I'm like, let me just do the easiest part, which is general cast. It gets you well oriented with the rules and how to do things. And honestly, I also kind of watched the fight happen when they were practicing a little bit. So it gave me a way to understand what was going on.
yeah,
So
I know we're heading into season now with auditions and such. And always every time we do suggest the general casters come to the fight rehearsal. Even if you're not fighting,
mm,
you can see what we do and kind of get a grasp of the main characters, not people, but the characters that are played throughout the show as we
yeah.
begin to learn them and find some way to do it. Were you your own character or were you a named character for
I
your
was
first
my
year?
I was my own character. I wasn't um casted as anyone, so I was a farmer's wife whose husband died at war and was just trying to live in Battle of Hastings.
Is trying to live within the battle, right in the
Yes,
epicenter. You're killing people on my house. Please don't. Which
please don't.
yeah, Viking era that definitely happened. Um,
Yeah.
but well, that's cool because I know you did do the 2009, and was Hastings at the least. What? Because you didn't do Return to Avalon, as I choke on my voice. You didn't come back for Avalon, but when did you return? Was that the year after?
No, it was actually 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
It was
started in, go ahead.
oh it was just family issues and I was able to return in 2012. You were saying?
Yeah, of course, because I started in 2010 with the Return to Avalon. Then we did Peasant Revolt, and sorry, I had a piece of ham in my mouth for some reason. I forgot that we're doing this at 2, just as I was making something to eat, because I'm trying to like lose weight. So I'm
Oh,
partialing out my food. But anywho, so yeah, no, you're an amazing individual. So I didn't get to meet you until 2012. But of course, I'm weird and socially awkward, and that's kind of phasing out. So it took time to really get to know you. But uh, what did you do King Arthur year?
King Arthur year
Sorry.
was
Yeah, did you come to the show that year or the
yeah,
Revolt?
it was the year that I believed I had visited at least two times. I know I did visit 2011 because then it was like when there was a guillotine thing and I looked and I'm like, I totally missed out on this year. I'm going to sign up for next year.
You know, I keep forgetting because we did Cressy, which I think is the one that you came back for.
Yes.
I
Mm.
think. Who knows? But I always forget the Irish year. Always forget that. Because I believe that came after the Peasant Revolt. And that was, of course, Jeremy played Maelshachna. We had Adam, Brent, and Dean as the main
Yeah.
characters, and everybody was wearing pajamas.
Yes, I
But
remember that fondly.
Cressy, what did you do for Cressy? Because I was just, um, I forget what I was, in all honesty. I was probably just soldier number 235, but who knows? What did you do?
I believe I was a tutor or of some sort because I was
Like,
carrying around
like an
Richard.
academic?
Yeah, Richard the Third's. He had a son. It was played by Michael. I was his tutor because at the time, like, we have this thing where if it's an underage cast member, they have to have one of the older members walk with them. And so I was mostly with Michael. I believe that was Krusty. Don't quote me on that though. There's so many years. It's like in
Yeah,
and out.
it blends in, and like I said, I keep forgetting Irish here, and some years just become one. So yeah, not a problem. Um, did you join us for the fight in that year? Fight gash?
Um, I believe so. Let's see. Yeah, it
I,
is blending. Because wasn't the king killed by the peasant for Cressy?
no, that was Peasant Revolt. So we had Dean as Wat Tyler, Carl as whoever. Um, in Cressy we had uh who goes by the Bruce here on the channel as
Yes.
our Spanish king of Majorca, and he took the cannon. But beyond that, we had a Tara as a queen. Brent was fighting her, and it's all coming back, but it's all sort of chips, you know,
Yeah.
like little chocolate chips that are
Actually,
melted together. So I'm not 100%, but I believe what you're referring to might be Peasant Revolt.
yeah. Yeah, most likely. I'm remembering, I would think I was just one of the warriors because I remember fighting
Oh, tutor.
Shannon.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah,
as a tutor,
because I
you're a
have
tutor.
the dress.
But,
No, it wasn't the tutor. That was a different
oh,
year. That was Richard the Third when he gets walk if his death. It was through one of the archery people. That was on a different year.
okay.
Now I'm remembering my dress. Usually my costumes that I have for each year helps me remember what happened because
Like
everything blends.
I used a different one for every year as well, except for doing the black suede tabard, which is of course completely anachronistic. For I think once I did the fight with you, where I wore no fight with Katie. Once I did the fight with Katie when she was literally fighting with a dead raccoon. Um,
Oh,
once I did that fight, I pretty much stuck to this sort of leather motif, black and leather. And then, of course, I used the suede tabard with my fight with you, which we were together fighting Jeremy and Katie. And then, of course, the next time I wore it was with King Alfred and just strictly in battle. But I totally get that. Every other year I've had pretty much a different outfit. Cressy, I don't know, who knows. But
you were maybe a
you were
duke because I remember you had
no,
a
no, I was
thing
probably
around
a
your
dookie. I was probably a piece of dookie. But
head.
I was wearing the dragon helm, so yes, I was wearing all green. I was very much a Slytherin that year. What were you wearing? Because you said you remembered based off that.
Red plaid. It was all in plaid. It
Plaid.
was, yes, the
So you're
pajamas.
also so you're also Irish,
Yes.
give or take.
Give or take, yeah.
Obviously, here on the podcast, we don't know via voice, but you're a person of color, which
Yeah.
was completely prevalent throughout the medieval period. It's not really touched on a lot in a lot of medieval entertainment. Maybe a little bit more now, so as we're starting to get into more progressive media. Uh, but of course, you were one of the very few, if not sometimes only, person of color on cast. So, from that perspective, what is that like for you, uh, being the only person to represent that sort of dynamic in our shows?
Um,
Yeah. Now, of course, we're not going to delve into too deep into that, but it's probably something of like an Anglo-Saxon situation. But I mean, we've mentioned before on the podcast, people traveled a very long distance and they intermingled quite regularly. Obviously, Vikings themselves and the Romans and the those of Asian trade routes, the Silk Road, which I don't know if is or isn't medieval, but I mean, you're gonna go traveling through trade routes, right? So people with spices and spice routes and different trade goods that they could intermingle with other people, such as the Anglo-Saxons, the Germanic tribes, the Romans, the Scandinavians, the Vikings, etc. So it's absolutely an intermingling. It just depends entirely on who's writing what. You know, like the Vikings didn't have much of a written language. They had the runes, so you kind of had to go off of Christianized Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons. Anglo-Saxons, of course, are going to be totally biased toward so that. But moving on, because we have such a wealth to go down. Because you and I did a lot of shows. I think I did. You officially will do maybe one more than I, but I think between the two of us, we have got about 10 shows that we've done for the fair itself. Um, so what kind of what was your first feature fight? I think that was with me, but that was another King Arthur year. But what was that like for you to do that? Because ours was a 4-person fight. Not at all. The point of that fight that I realized very quickly was to help you, to guide you into realizing that there's a reason why you were chosen. Because you've been doing this for so long, you know what you're doing, you do it really well, you just overthink it. And I think a lot of people overthink it. A lot of people let their sort of, myself included for a good long time, let their personal biases against themselves sort of cloud their judgment and get in their way. And eventually it sort of clears up. But that was the point. You know, it was discussed. You know, you're a good fighter. You know what you're doing. You've been with us a long time. It's time to get you out there. And I mean, we had a really good fight. Um, I kind of allowed myself to take a back seat in terms of any sort of decision making and just work on making sure everything intertwined and you were guided ahead. But you, I worked with Jeremy a little bit. I love working with Jeremy. He's very, very creative and also grounded. He's a very grounded fighter. But you predominantly worked with him. And obviously, I did a fight with Katie, I believe the previous year. So, how was your experience working with those two? We had a little bit of an exchange too. Yeah, because I mean, each of us have a different, not just aesthetic, but way of fighting. So you had sort of a sample of each, not just from the fight training, which sometimes can get forgotten, Obviously, we've worked together several times with the training fights. Every year, I try to work with you at least once. But how was it in our theater of the rounds doing a fight during show with each of us? Mhm. Oh, we do. We do. Oh, but like I mentioned, there's a lot of overthinking. So a lot of also forgetfulness. Like if you ask me to remember, sorry, I'm done with the ham. If you ask me to remember like any sort of training fight that wasn't filmed and wasn't something that was deeply ingrained, I am not gonna know. Like I fought with Dan for a training fight because oh, I really want to work with Dan because he's amazing. And I'm like, and he's like, yeah, we worked with each other once, and I'm like, what? I don't remember that. Like, mhm. Yeah, he's very story driven, very linear. He likes to know why he's fighting, and he likes to know why we're doing each move. So at first, sometimes, because I like to be fluid, I like to just let it happen, let moves happen as they go, not really create a story because we'll do our fight and then we'll make a story out of it. He's very rigid in terms of this. We need a story, we need a beginning, middle, and end. We need to know why we're doing this. So at first it was a little frustrating. I was like, really? He's so amazing. And it's just so sort of polar opposites, a clash of styles. Uh, so I don't know how we got what we did. I don't even remember what we did. At least the final product, I just remember working with him and he was amazing. But so yeah, no, with you, we do try to learn to be we try to emphasize, I should say, right? We try to emphasize fluid fights. Every fight should have a meaning, but I think that's something that's sort of just kind of hollered out, kind of yelled out into the ether. It's not something that's really hammered down until fights are actually shown. So like they'll reference it, but it's not a training thing. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, this and this. Like you really should have made that a training point. But I also want to touch on the fact that you're female, so you have a completely different as obviously we can tell. Um, but you have a completely different perspective than, say, I do. Um, in terms of I'm male, I will always portray a male on the field, on the show, in whatever show that we do, both for the channel as well as for any festival or production, because I'm a male, right? Um, sure, I could cross dress and be woman number 234, um, but I like I mentioned before, I probably wouldn't be passing. So for some people, you can definitely intermingle, but I'll always be male. So I don't know what that perspective is like to be female, to have the restrictions that you have as a female within as it pertains to clothing, as it pertains to station, as it pertains to also being out in the lanes. So what is that like? Well, let's first start with clothing because women, at least for the most part, do have a specific dress code. So what is that like for you? Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, so well, let's delve into that really briefly, very briefly, because we have two factors here in that regard. One is you're right. There are very few prominent female characters that you could build a festival around. Now, we just did two of them to some extent. We did Joan of Arc, which is a very proper female oriented festival that we did. That was Nicole. She rocked it. That was a very specific female has to be the lead character. You cannot sway from this. And in fact, it works to have as little females as possible because she was so prominent. But we also did King Arthur, which was Tara's year. She was told that she would be queen, queen role. That it was her festival year. This was her time to shine. And then they gave the King fight to two other people who were male and didn't actually really want it. And it was just really out of place. And although they were great fighters, it was a great fight. It was very out of place. All of this focus was put on Morgan Le Fay, and then it was like all of that was spotlight that should have been on Morgan Le Fay because that's what the festival is built around. Morgan and Merlin, Morgan versus Merlin. And like, oh, by the way, these two guys. So I kind of averted that with King Alfred here. They were thinking of maybe having Alfred fight someone else and Guthrum fight someone else, which I would have been fine with. I don't care. I had the joy of the perspective of playing both a king, having a second match fight, and also living at the end of second fight or second match, which I've done before. But it as a sort of like soldier number 10, I got to be a king and having that perspective of authority, right? At least not authority over you guys, but authority to help direct the time frame of the show. It's like plot point, plot point, plot point, plot point. Let's go. Um, Tara didn't get that with Morgan Le Fay. Nicole did because she should have. She's Joan of Arc. But how many female historical figures, especially in your sense, female person of color, which there were absolutely, but how many can you build a festival around? Obviously, I go ahead. Exactly. It, it also is derived by the location. Like we very rarely leave the British Isles. We've done Germanic, we've done French. However, we very rarely, as I said, leave the British Isles. So we've done. So I know we could absolutely do so much more. We could do the Germanic tribes, the Druids, right? This is when Rome was starting to go toward Britain, and of course, I'll say the British Isles because off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Wessex and Northumbria. I'm thinking of Viking era uh, Isles. This was slightly different in that time frame. Earlier, obviously, by a couple to 100 years. Um, we could do that. We could go into Germany again, but beyond that, obviously, you could go to Rome. Rome extended throughout Europe, and I don't think we've ever done a Roman scenario. You could always do a Roman scenario where you reach the Germanic tribes, where you reach the early Anglo-Saxons. Um, there's so much involved in that. But also, I love the Three Kingdom era in China, and I love the medieval in fact, early medieval Japan. So there's that. But I mean, I would love to do a festival regarding Three Kingdom era. I don't care. I'll totally be just a Caucasian British dude number 532. I don't care. Or a trader, a Roman trader or an Anglo-Saxon trader, a Viking trader. I don't care. Well, they were around in the Third Kingdom era, but that predates medieval period. But I mean, why not go to medieval Africa? Why not go to medieval North Africa? Um, the medieval Arabs, the medieval Holy Lands. Let's go further south. Let's go to Morocco and South Africa, and all these different cultures, and North America and South America had a medieval period as well. Um, the Native American or Aborigines, or however they prefer to be called, uh, they had a medieval period as well. Remember, the Vikings fought and encountered and intermingled with the native Aborigines of America. So I would love, and I will, with you on the channel, definitely check into this. We need to give more reach to those regions besides just the British Isles, because it's as you know, just not really touched on. A lot of the characters you play have little to no authority. They're often just kind of like, oh, well, there's Melissa and Natalie and whoever other individuals like Patricia. Here's token characters number 3, 2, and 4. When really you should be so much more emphasized. Um, give you a leadership role. Give you a role like Patricia had during 2010's Return to Avalon. I think she was like a queen of sorts. And do that because you shouldn't be cast in the shadows. Um, I mean, I didn't even talk my first year. I stuttered a lot, and I still stutter, but it's less of a social anxiety and more of just a speech impediment. But you as well, I notice you get a lot of social anxiety. I think that what we do draws in people like us, and some of us either break that shell or we don't. And so I get you. When I'm out in the lanes, with the exception of when I was Alfred and the preacher, I just like to go into the merchant tents, engage with the merchants and the people in there, and sort of try to get into something more of a personal setting because I don't like large crowds. I don't like when I walk by people and I make comments and stuff. I'm walking by people just making comments, right? I'm not really acknowledging them as people. They're not human to me. They're just a crowd. They're a number. They're an object that I can walk by and make a comment toward. But if you walk into a merchant tent and you're respectful of the merchant, right? You don't want to stop them from making sales. You want to maybe make comments about the product, sell the product with them, but make it personal and make it period and in character. I think it's just so much easier because the people are there to understand what they're looking at. They want to buy something. The merchant wants you to sell it as well because this is sometimes period, sometimes not, but still amazing product that they want to get out of there so they can make some money too. That's how I've found a way to sort of get around it is try to narrow it down to something more personal interactions. Moving down the list, weapons. I've got a sword, a Viking sex. I've got an axe. But what do you have? What have you used? What have you not used? What would you like to use? So what are your weapons? Hmm. Yeah. So there is a modified falchion that looks like a machete. So if you look at, and this is a shameful plug or shameless, you look at modern history TV, um, Mr. Kingsley, there is an episode where he uses a falchion from a religious text. It is not off the top of my head. My apologies. I did write it down because I actually want to purchase it. However, I want to purchase what he had, which is actually inaccurate. Sorry, but let me see if I can grab the religious text while I describe it. So what he uses, and I send you the link to it, is a falchion that looks a lot like a machete. His version is literally just straight up, straight down, and straight back down to the hilt, much like a machete. His has X's on it, which is so cool. It looks so powerful, and it really is a gruesome weapon. I would suggest you get that. However, because it is period. However, I question his version, and only because um, the actual historical one has these weird, and I think they're really stupid, but these weird little wavy, almost pompadour-like uh, things at the very top edge of the falchion, and it looks goofy, but is actually period. Yeah, no. Trying to look up this up is not working, and I'm not gonna play the video to listen to him find it. But he doesn't even mention it in his. That's the only complaint I have about modern history TV is that he doesn't specify information where you're supposed to specify information, which is in the description. Just kind of, and I love him. I watch all of his videos multiple times. I think I've seen all of his videos like 100 times over. So I'm not insulting or anything, but he just kind of like says a phrase and then he continues with phrasing and then it credits. So it's like that's awesome, but what is this and where is it from and where can I get it? But anywho, you could do that. I'm gonna give you the information after the podcast for you to check it out. I believe Cult of Athena sells it. Actually, duh, Cult of Athena. So let's pull up Cult of Athena. It is sold at one of these medieval battle ready shops. I love Cult of Athena. I love BKS. I think BKS may do it. I'm not 100%. The one that Mr. Kingsley OBE has is similar to a 13th century falchion with a basilard hilt. However, it is not. Um, it is a because this is so unique, right? Um, on Cult of Athena, it looks a lot like the Age of Craft falchion, Delton 13th century falchion, blank grip. If you take the pommel off, it looks like what he has. He had his custom made, I think. I think. I'm not 100%. Don't quote me on that. But if you want medieval storm castle, what am I doing? I'm looking for medieval collectibles. One of these places actually sells it. Here, what have you used? Yeah, yeah. Tina's Club, who is our attire, who's our historical clothing person. She doesn't make them. She advises us. She's our wonderful advisor. She has a club that's got the skull thing. But how did you use it? Because you used it in the fight with me. Yes. Yes, it's coming back to me because you were pretty intimidating with that too, because we because remember you were like banging it against the ground, like I'm gonna bash your head in. And did you throw it at Jeremy? And then he, or was that me? Oh yeah, yeah. So that falchion that I suggested is the Mischowski falchion, two-handed Mischowski falchion. It is in medieval collectibles for 111. It's period accurate. The one on Modern History TV, I think, is more of a 13th century one, but I would have to look that up. I love the one that he's using more than this goofy looking one. But did you use anything else that you don't own? Did you ever get to use a bow? Yeah. You- Mhm. Didn't you and I do, no, we did hand to hand. Because of course that's also a fighting style. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. So we definitely needed to dive down that road together. Because I love fighting you. You are fluid. You're very easy to work with. You're also very easy to get on with and talk with. Um, but also to that extent, so we talked obviously each time we talk about the festival that we do, but you and I also do other shows. Now I haven't had you on the channel yet for in terms of a live action video, because the last time we did it, I was doing a very limited, sort of a Mortal Kombat epic rap battles esque pick and choose fighting thing, which maybe we'll do that in the future. I don't know, but I definitely want to delve into a lot of stuff with you here on the channel specifically. But you've done other shows. I've done other shows. Obviously, I did a Harry Potter show. You have done other shows, but what else have you done? Yes. So we did together. I think we were in the same boat as well. A pirate show, led under, of course, um, the Mutineers, and those were unique. My complaint about that was that it was just not. It just was very little authenticity, and the we were dealing with a lot of people that didn't really want us there. Um, and it wasn't very period accurate. Like our ship, and I think Michelle's was like one of the only few that tried to be period accurate. But it's so hard to do that when you're on pavement, when your tent is literally facing a sunglasses shop and a beach store. I love the area. I loved our group, and I love the experience. And I wish I we could do that again. I wish it was a recurring thing because I would have done it again. Um, yeah, yeah. I did. Not to interrupt. Sorry. I did a fight in the bar brawl, which was now I wanted a feature fight, uh, I don't know why I didn't. I think I didn't because I didn't have a car at the time, and doing the pirate show was so different than medieval. Um, One, the rehearsal process was painful, boring, boring. But I think this is boring because we as a group kind of knew already what we were going to do. We just didn't know what we were getting into. And I think some of us just weren't as into it. I think if we were doing it now, oh, each rehearsal would be so engaging. But go ahead, you were saying something. Were you? Were you in the bar brawl? Oh my goodness. Yeah, yeah. So the one thing that really pissed me off because I loved actually doing the pirate show, and I loved our group and Michelle and everything of that nature. The biggest thing that pissed me off to the point of possibly walking was the direction of the bar brawl. Looking back, hindsight 2021, I understand, and I don't hold a grudge, or I'm not really angry anymore. I understand what he did and all that stuff. I was a small fish in a ocean, right? So I just, because first and foremost, I got to be a bard, you know, because it's pirates. It's not medieval. It's not Viking. It's not Three Kingdom era. I could actually have a guitar. I could have an erhu, an instrument from China. I could have a semi-modern instrument. And I had, I think, three instruments that I took with me: kalimba, an erhu, and besides my guitar, which was not period, but also just a wooden flute. And I was going to use the wooden flute as a weapon. I wasn't actually going to have a weapon because I wanted to be just a musician on the ship. Someone who tagged along, not really a pirate, who just is making music and giving them good vibes. And just kind of got caught up in some of the fighting. And the dude was like, that's I think he flat out was like, "Ugh, that's gay. You're not doing that. That's stupid. You're not doing that in my fight show." And I'm like, "Excuse me, points one, two, and three. Before I cut you with this splintered flute, um, before I screw myself and get myself arrested by kicking your butt or failing to do so, I bid my oh, I was gonna walk. I was so pissed, livid. I was going to grab a weapon and stab him. And then I'm going, okay, okay, whatever. Let's just whatever. I'll tuck it to my side and use one of my daggers. Or actually my sword. Um I don't know what I used. I may use a sword or a dagger. Who knows? Who cares? So I use that and I get disarmed. I go, no, you have to do this move and that move and this move. I'm like, you talk to me one more time, I'm gonna kill you. So at some point, me and the three people I did work with, and they were nice. We walked through everything. We made it work, but that was such a don't do those kind of shows. Don't do shows where the director dictates what you do. You do a show where you choreograph because that's how you learn. That was such a I will not do that again. I will not do a fight that someone dictates. However, I have no bad blood toward the person. He's amazing fighter and mind and creative person, but it took me a while to sort of see that and understand. No, I'm wrong going into this. I need to just let them take the wheel and experience it in their perspective. So sometimes maybe for new people, and I'm still vehemently against it. I believe you don't learn unless you're doing it by yourself and you're 2 steps forwards, 3 steps back. Um, so, but I can foresee it being good for, like, first year people doing, like, a training fight. Like, "Hey, do these 15 moves, do these exact 15 moves, let's see how you do," and then sorta ease them off, but I'm still vehemently against it. But I loved doing the pirate show, and I'm very saddened that those stopped. Because if those were still going, I'd still be doing it as that and the medieval show. But you also said you did a Viking show. Yeah, yeah. I would love to do a Viking festival. I know we did Viking Year, and I was King Alfred. I would love to do the Viking perspective, right? Because I wasn't a Viking, which I would gladly do Saxon again. But I'd love to be a Viking, but I want to do it in a Viking festival, specifically Viking festival, like what Brent or Stephanie or any of the other million Viking festivals out there do. Um, but also something I'm not very fond of steampunk. It's something that I wish I was, but every time I get into it, that sort of stain of Victorian era gets muddied into it, and I'm like, ugh, Victorian era. Little people, you common folk and your bad movies and tropes. But what was it like for the cyberpunk? Because you had an amazing outfit when you were doing it. So how was that like? Yeah, because it's so outside of what we do. Um, Steampunk can be whatever time frame you want, quite literally. Um, Did you guys do specifically Victorian steampunk, or was it just whatever you desired? Or were there specific groups like the pirate show that did specific time frames and specific tropes? Ew. Yeah, one of the things I also kind of is every time I try to get into steampunk, get turned off to it, is I really don't like the Victorian, but I also really don't like the industrial era. On the Industrial Revolution, I really, really hate that era. I don't know why, it doesn't appeal to me. That sort of Gangs of New York, although I liked Gangs of New York, but that sort of just Peaky Blinders or whatever show does it, or just Hugo, I don't know, I just really don't like it. All the deaths. Well, I mean, what about all the deaths in the medieval period? But, no, a lot of it is just it's a lot of steel and industrial, and it's metal, and it's corporate, and it's ash and smog, and the clothing is poor and dapper. It really doesn't appeal to me. Put me in a tunic, and I'm happy. Put me in some postmodern cyberpunk clothing, and I'm happy, even though I don't really care for cyberpunk either. Um, Same thing, maybe punk. Maybe it's just the punk thing. Because I love Star Wars, and I like Star Trek, which of course, to an extent, futuristic, right? And I love Blade Runner too. But I don't know. It's just something about steampunk doesn't cut it for me. I love the idea of it. I just don't like the execution. So maybe I will try to find something that fits me. But you were saying something. It's all just part of the cogs of time. Uh, so rounding up a couple things. So one thing I actually didn't ask anybody. I don't believe I did, and I really do want to know everyone's answer to this. If you could do a time frame or historical character or type of character, what would you like to do that you haven't done already? So are you thinking, sorry, go ahead. Um, I'm trying to clarify. So are you thinking someone out of time as in someone going back in time? Or like taking a samurai and introducing them to the Vikings? Sort of like Encino Man? Like you're taking a caveman to the modern period? Okay, I gotcha. Gotcha. It's I think what you're it's sort of like, you know how the woolly mammoths existed when the ancient Egyptians were building pyramids? But we think, because they're so different concepts, that the mammoths had to have come before the Egyptians, right? So something like that. Same time frame, just sort of out of place. We should do that because that's a really cool idea too. Because obviously, think about the trade routes, spice routes from India, China, Japan, the Holy Lands, and the British Isles and Scandinavia. Imagine, imagine people of various cultures and types traveling through those trade routes. We could do a series featuring traders of various different cultures and lands, and do that very thing. And one of them, bring in like a warrior with them. Microphone noises. So that's kind of it. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss on your mind? Touche, touche. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. We've kind of wrapped up a good, in-depth conversation with great tangents. Delved into pretty much our history with the fair together. We've been together doing the show, not together, but doing the show for quite a while. Obviously, I'm not going to be in this one due to circumstances. Indeed, I'd love to have you on many more times, even casually. Um, so that has been a wonderful episode of the Talk Past podcast, festival stories version, which we will delve into many times. There'll be like various numbers of these festival stories because there's a lot of us, at least 30. Um, so yeah, you have a wonderful day, and everybody listening, indeed, everyone listening, you have a great day, and adios. Beep, beep, boop.